They looked like the perfect family. 2 moms, 6 beautiful kids, always smiling in Facebook photos, dancing at festivals, hugging strangers at protests. The kind of family that made headlines for love, until they made headlines for something else. On March 26, 2018, their SUV was found at the bottom of a 100-foot cliff along California's Highway 1. All 8 people gone. No tire marks. No signs of braking. Just a straight plunge into the Pacific. But the deeper investigators looked, the darker it got. There were warning signs, CPS reports, mysterious disappearances, and one horrifying question that still haunts everyone. Did they fall? Or were they driven over the edge on purpose? This is the chilling story of the Hart family crash, and the secrets it took with it. In March 2018, a devastating tragedy unfolded on the cliffs of Mendocino County, California, that would shock the nation and raise profound questions about child welfare, social media facades, and the failures of our protective systems. The Hart family case represents one of the most disturbing murder-suicide cases in recent American history, involving 2 adoptive mothers and 6 children whose lives were cut tragically short. What makes this case particularly haunting is how it peeled back the layers of what appeared to be a progressive, loving family to reveal a horrific reality of abuse, control, and systematic neglect. On that fateful day, Jennifer Hart deliberately drove her family's SUV off a 100-foot cliff, killing herself, her wife Sarah, and their 6 adopted children. But this wasn't a spontaneous act of desperation. Evidence would later show this was a calculated murder-suicide, planned and executed by 2 women who had been abusing these children for years while maintaining a carefully crafted public image of being the perfect progressive family. The Hart family story is one that forces us to confront uncomfortable truths about how easily abuse can be hidden behind carefully curated public images, how multiple systems designed to protect children can fail catastrophically, and how society's assumptions about what constitutes a good family can blind us to obvious warning signs. This case involves issues of race, sexuality, adoption, social media manipulation, and systemic failures that span across multiple states and nearly a decade of missed opportunities. Today, we're going to examine the Hart family case in comprehensive detail, exploring not just what happened, but how it was allowed to happen. We'll trace the background of Jennifer and Sarah Hart, their troubled path to becoming adoptive parents, the mounting evidence of abuse that was repeatedly overlooked or dismissed, and the final desperate attempts by the children to escape before their lives were ended on that California clifftop. This is a story that demands we ask difficult questions about our child protection systems, our assumptions about family structures, and our collective responsibility to protect the most vulnerable among us. To understand this tragedy, we need to start with Jennifer and Sarah Hart themselves, 2 women whose paths would converge in college, and whose relationship would ultimately prove deadly for 6 innocent children. Both women were born in 1979 and grew up in South Dakota as the eldest children in their respective families, a birth order that often creates individuals accustomed to control and responsibility. Jennifer Jean Hart was born on June 4, 1979, in Huron, South Dakota, a small city with a population of around 12,000 people. She came from what appeared to be a stable family with 2 younger siblings. Interestingly, according to her father, Jennifer was not raised as a Lutheran but actively sought out the faith during her college years, suggesting an early pattern of religious exploration or perhaps spiritual searching that would later manifest in different ways. Jennifer attended Huron High School, where she was likely known as an ambitious student with plans for higher education. Sarah Margaret Hart, née Gengler, was born on April 8, 1979, in Big Stone City, South Dakota, though some sources place her in adjacent Ortonville, Minnesota. This small border community reflects the interconnected nature of rural Midwest life, where state lines often matter less than community ties. Sarah had 3 siblings, making her the eldest of 4 children, and attended Ortonville High School in Minnesota, crossing state lines for her education. The most significant turning point in both women's lives came when their paths crossed at Northern State University in Aberdeen, South Dakota. Sarah had initially started her college career at the University of Minnesota, but after just 1 semester, she transferred to Northern State, a decision that would prove fateful. Jennifer began her higher education at Augustana University in Sioux Falls, but she too transferred to Northern State in 1999, where she would meet Sarah and begin the relationship that would define both their lives. Both women chose to major in elementary education, with Sarah specializing in special education. This career choice is significant because it suggests they both had an interest in working with children and may have genuinely believed they had something positive to offer young people. Sarah's focus on special education is particularly noteworthy, as it indicates training in working with vulnerable children who have additional needs. This background would later be used to explain away some of the children's behaviors as the result of their traumatic backgrounds rather than ongoing abuse. The college years marked the beginning of their romantic relationship, but it also revealed patterns that would persist throughout their lives. While Sarah completed her degree and graduated in 2002, Jennifer left the university without graduating, a decision that speaks to either changing priorities or perhaps an inability to complete long-term commitments. This pattern of Jennifer starting things but not finishing them would reappear throughout their lives together. Their early relationship was complicated by the social context of being a same-sex couple in conservative South Dakota in the early 2000s. According to Jennifer's later Facebook posts, they were initially closeted when living in South Dakota, and when they decided to come out, they lost friends. This experience of rejection would become a defining narrative for Jennifer, who would later use their status as a marginalized couple to deflect criticism and garner sympathy. The early years of Jennifer and Sarah's relationship were marked by a series of moves and job changes that would establish patterns of instability and isolation that would later prove crucial to understanding their family dynamic. In 2004, they made their first major move together to Alexandria, Minnesota, a city of about 13,000 people, where they both found employment at a Herberger's department store. This move represented their decision to be open about their relationship, a significant step for a couple who had been closeted in South Dakota. The jobs at Herberger's revealed their different approaches to work and responsibility. While Sarah advanced to become a manager, demonstrating leadership skills and reliability, Jennifer worked various jobs without the same level of commitment or advancement. In 2006, Jennifer made the decision to become a stay-at-home mother, despite the fact that they didn't yet have children. This decision suggests either advanced planning for adoption or perhaps a desire to avoid the responsibilities of traditional employment. Their relationship reached a legal milestone in 2009 when they traveled to Connecticut to be married. At the time, same-sex marriage was not legal in all states, making their union both a personal commitment and a political statement. The fact that they were willing to travel to another state to formalize their relationship demonstrates the importance they placed on legal recognition of their partnership, something that would later become relevant to their ability to adopt children as a legally married couple. However, even as they were building their life together, concerning patterns were emerging in their family relationships. Both Jennifer and Sarah began to distance themselves from their biological families, despite the fact that both families were reportedly accepting of their sexual orientation and relationship. This isolation wasn't driven by family rejection of their lifestyle, but rather by what state reports would later describe as criticism of their parenting approach. Jennifer's relationship with her father became particularly strained, with their relationship effectively ending after 2001. This estrangement occurred years before they adopted children, suggesting that the issues weren't solely about parenting disagreements. The pattern of cutting off family members who questioned or criticized them would become a consistent theme throughout their lives. The couple continued their pattern of frequent moves, relocating to West Lynn, Oregon, before eventually settling in an unincorporated area near Woodland, Washington. Sarah continued her retail management career, becoming a manager at a Kohl's store in Hazel Dell. These frequent relocations served multiple purposes. They allowed the couple to start fresh in communities where they weren't known. They removed them from oversight by extended family members, and they created a lifestyle where the children would have no stable external relationships or support systems. The financial aspect of their life becomes important to understand their later motivations. Before adopting children, they were a two-income household with Sarah working in retail management and Jennifer occasionally holding various jobs. Their lifestyle appears to have been comfortable but not lavish, setting the stage for what would later become a significant financial dependence on adoption subsidies. The Hart family's journey to becoming adoptive parents began with what should have been a warning sign about their suitability as caregivers. Before adopting their 6 children, Jennifer and Sarah served as foster parents to a 15-year-old girl. Foster care is often seen as a stepping stone to adoption, allowing potential parents to demonstrate their ability to care for children while providing temporary homes for youth in need. However, the Hart's behavior with this foster child revealed disturbing patterns that should have disqualified them from future placements. Just 1 week before their first 3 adopted children were scheduled to arrive, Jennifer and Sarah made a decision that speaks to their callous disregard for the emotional well-being of children in their care. They drove the 15-year-old to a scheduled therapist appointment and simply abandoned her there. The therapist was left with the devastating task of informing the teenager that the Harts would not be coming back for her. This abandonment of a vulnerable teenager represents more than just poor judgment. It demonstrates a fundamental lack of empathy and commitment to the children they were supposed to protect. The timing is particularly cruel, as it occurred just as they were preparing to welcome 3 new children into their home. This suggests that they viewed children as interchangeable and disposable, keeping only those who served their purposes while discarding those who didn't. Despite this alarming incident, the adoption process continued, and on March 4, 2006, 3 children were placed with the Harts. Marcus Hart, born in 1998 and therefore 8 years old at placement. Hannah Jean, born in 2002 and thus 4 years old. And Abigail, born in 2003 and only 3 years old at the time. These children came from Colorado County, Texas, and their adoption was finalized that September. The circumstances that led these children to be available for adoption reflect the complex realities of the child welfare system. Like many children in care, they had experienced trauma and instability before their placement with the Harts. This vulnerability should have made them particularly deserving of careful, nurturing care, but instead, it made them easier targets for manipulation and abuse. 2 years later, in June 2008, the Harts expanded their family again by adopting 3 additional children, all siblings. Sierra Maya, born in 2005 and therefore about 3 years old. Devonte Jordan, born in 2002 and 6 years old. And Jeremiah Hart, born in 2004 and 4 years old. These children originated from Houston and had experienced a particularly traumatic path to adoption. The story of how Sierra, Devonte, and Jeremiah came to be adopted reveals the complex web of family dysfunction and system failures that often precede adoption. Their biological mother, Sherry Davis, had lost custody due to substance abuse problems in August 2006. The children were initially placed with their paternal aunt, Priscilla Celestine, under the strict condition that they have no contact with their biological mother. This arrangement might have provided stability, but a single decision by Celestine would change everything. When Celestine was required to work an additional shift, she made the fateful decision to allow Sherry Davis to babysit the children, directly violating the custody agreement. A caseworker observed this violation, leading to the immediate removal of the children from Celestine's care. A court then prevented Celestine from obtaining permanent custody, despite her previous efforts to care for the children. The children were placed in foster care, where they remained until their adoption by the Harts. Tragically, the children had an older brother, Dante, who was not adopted by the Harts due to behavioral issues. This decision to separate siblings speaks to the Hart selectivity in choosing children who would be easier to control and manage. It also meant that these three younger children lost not only their biological family but also their connection to their older brother. One of the most disturbing aspects of the Hart family case is the financial motivation that appears to have driven many of their decisions regarding the children. The Harts received substantial funds from the state of Texas to support their 6 adopted children, money that accounted for almost 50% of the family's total income. This financial arrangement created a perverse incentive structure where the children themselves became the primary source of the family's economic stability. Adoption subsidies are designed to remove financial barriers that might prevent loving families from adopting children with special needs or difficult backgrounds. The intention is noble, to ensure that children aren't trapped in institutional care, simply because potential parents can't afford their care. However, in the Hart family's case, these subsidies appear to have created a situation where the children were viewed more as income sources than as beloved family members. The fact that the adoption payments represented nearly half of their household income made the children essentially financially indispensable to the Hart's lifestyle. This economic dependence may help explain why the couple was so determined to keep the children, even as evidence of abuse mounted and authorities began investigating. Losing the children would have meant losing a significant portion of their income, forcing Sarah to support the household on her retail manager's salary alone. This financial dynamic also helps explain the couple's resistance to outside intervention and their pattern of moving when scrutiny increased. Each time authorities became involved, the Harts had strong economic incentives to relocate and start fresh, rather than submit to ongoing supervision or risk losing the children and their associated payments. During this period, Jennifer became increasingly active on social media, particularly Facebook, where she began crafting the public image that would serve as camouflage for the abuse occurring behind closed doors. Her posts painted a picture of a loving, progressive family that had rescued 6 African-American children from difficult circumstances and was providing them with opportunities they never would have had otherwise. Jennifer's social media presence was carefully curated to project an image of a family that embodied the best of progressive values. A racially diverse household led by a same-sex couple who were committed to social justice causes. She shared photos of family trips, posted about political issues, and presented their family as an example of love conquering all obstacles. This online persona would prove crucial to deflecting criticism and investigation. The children themselves were frequently featured in these social media posts, often posed in ways that suggested happiness and family unity. However, even from early on, careful observers noted something troubling about these images. One particularly insightful comment from 2013 observed that the kids pose and are made to look like one big happy family, but after the photo event, they go back to looking lifeless. This observation captures something crucial about the Hart family dynamic: the performance of happiness for public consumption while the reality behind closed doors was entirely different. The children were essentially props in Jennifer's carefully constructed narrative about their family, trained to smile for cameras and present a united front while suffering in private. The couple's increasing isolation from their biological families during this period also takes on new significance when viewed through the lens of their financial dependence on the children. Family members who might have questioned the children's treatment or noticed signs of abuse were systematically cut out of their lives. This isolation wasn't accidental. It was a deliberate strategy to eliminate potential sources of oversight or intervention. The first documented abuse occurred in 2008 in Minnesota when a teacher noticed bruises on Hannah's arm. Hannah reported Jennifer had hit her with a belt, But instead of increased oversight, all 6 children were pulled from public school within months, removing them from daily contact with mandatory reporters. In 2010, 6-year-old Abigail revealed severe abuse, reporting owies on her back and stomach and describing how Jennifer and Sarah had beaten her and held her head in cold water over a missing penny. When Child Protective Services interviewed all the children, they consistently reported being spanked constantly and deprived of food as punishment. Sarah pled guilty to assault charges but received only 1 year of community service, a remarkably light sentence for admitting to assaulting multiple children. In 2011, Hannah told a school nurse she hadn't eaten all day, but Sarah dismissed this as Hannah playing the food card. Rather than investigating further, the school system allowed the family to homeschool all 6 children, permanently removing their last regular contact with mandatory reporters. The food deprivation was particularly damaging, creating constant anxiety and dependence as children had to please their abusers to meet basic biological needs. Homeschooling allowed the Harts to control the children's education entirely, isolating them from normal family relationship models and limiting their ability to recognize their treatment as abusive. When the Hart family moved to Oregon in 2013, authorities were notified about the previous Minnesota abuse allegations, presenting an opportunity for fresh investigation. The Oregon Department of Human Services conducted interviews with the family and acquaintances, revealing a household governed by fear and control. Multiple witnesses reported disturbing observations. Children were forced to raise their hands before speaking, weren't allowed to wish each other happy birthday, and were prohibited from laughing at the dinner table. Friends described the children as appearing poorly fed and looking small for their ages, suggesting chronic malnutrition. In one incident, Jennifer allowed each child only a small pizza slice, then punished all of them by withholding breakfast and forcing them to lie on beds for 5 hours when the pizza was finished. Witnesses consistently described the children as scared to death of Jen, and likened them to trained robots, children who had learned to suppress natural responses to avoid punishment. Despite overwhelming testimony from multiple sources, the children remained silent during interviews, likely due to psychological control, fear of retaliation, or genuine belief their treatment was normal. Jennifer deflected criticism by claiming discrimination, arguing that problems stemmed from intolerance toward 2 lesbian mothers with 6 African American children. This manipulation of progressive values made it difficult for investigators to pursue allegations without appearing prejudiced. Tragically, the Oregon investigation concluded they could not determine whether the Harts posed a safety threat to the children, a catastrophic failure that ignored clear evidence from multiple sources and represented one of the most significant missed opportunities to save these children's lives. After Oregon's failed investigation, the Hart family moved to Washington State near Woodland, following their pattern of relocating when scrutiny intensified. Their facade began crumbling almost immediately. In August 2017, 16-year-old Hannah made a desperate escape, jumping from her second-story bedroom window at 1:30 a.m. and running to neighbors, the DeKalb family. Her words were heartbreaking and prophetic. "Don't make me go back. They're racists and they abuse us." This directly contradicted the Harts' public image as progressive champions of racial equality and represented the first time a child had explicitly asked for outside help. The Harts quickly retrieved Hannah, and Jennifer went into damage control, claiming Hannah was lying and explaining the children's behavior by calling them drug babies and suggesting Hannah's biological mother's bipolar disorder affected her perception of reality. This manipulation exploited assumptions about adopted children from difficult backgrounds. Following Hannah's escape, the DeKalbs paid closer attention and discovered Devontae, famous for hugging a police officer at a 2014 protest, constantly begging them for food. He specifically asked them not to tell Jennifer, revealing his fear of punishment. Devontae disclosed that his adoptive mothers withheld food as punishment and sometimes physically abused the children. The DeKalbs reported the family to police and Washington State Department of Social and Health Services, DSHS. Caseworkers attempted contact twice. Once on March 23, 2018, 3 days before the murders, and again on the day of the murders. No one answered the door during either visit, suggesting the Harts were already planning their final act and avoiding any contact that might interfere. On March 26, 2018, faced with the possibility of finally losing control of the children they had abused for years, Jennifer and Sarah Hart made the ultimate decision of control. If they couldn't keep the children, no one could have them. Jennifer drove their GMC Yukon XL, with all 8 family members inside, off a 100-foot cliff on California State Route 1 in Mendocino County, California, near Westport. The location itself is significant. The Pacific Coast Highway near Mendocino County is known for its dramatic cliffs and scenic beauty, but it's also notorious for accidents due to the dangerous combination of narrow roads, steep drops, and often foggy conditions. However, this was not an accident. Every piece of evidence points to a carefully planned murder-suicide designed to end the lives of all 8 family members. The vehicle landed upside down on a beach below the cliff, and the scene was devastating. The bodies of 5 of the children were found in or near the vehicle. Hannah, who had so desperately tried to escape just months earlier. Marcus, the oldest at 19. Jeremiah, who was 14. Abigail, also 14, and Sierra, who was only 12 years old. The body of 15-year-old Devontae, who had become the unwitting face of the family through his famous photograph hugging a police officer, was never found, though he was almost certainly in the vehicle at the time of the crash. The evidence revealed the premeditated nature of this act in horrifying detail. Expert analysis of the SUV's internal airbag-deploying computer provided crucial forensic evidence about the final moments. The data showed that the Yukon had been intentionally driven off the edge of the cliff from a complete standstill. The vehicle accelerated to 20 miles per hour in just 3 seconds, with the throttle pushed to 100%. This was not a moment of panic or an accident. It was a deliberate act of murder. The toxicology results provided even more evidence of premeditation and revealed the calculated cruelty of the final act. Jennifer's blood alcohol content was over the legal limit at the time of the crash, suggesting she had been drinking, possibly to build courage for what she was about to do. More disturbing was the presence of diphenhydramine, the active ingredient in Benadryl, in the systems of both Sarah and 2 of the children. Sarah's internet search history in the days before the murders revealed the planning that went into this final act. She had made Google searches inquiring about the lethality of Benadryl, researching how much of the over-the-counter medication would be needed to cause serious harm or death. She also searched for information about death by drowning, perhaps considering different methods or wanting to understand what the children might experience. Her searches also included looking for no-kill shelters for dogs. And indeed, the family's 2 dogs were found alive and unharmed inside the Hart family home after the murders. This detail is particularly chilling because it shows that Sarah had more concern for the welfare of their pets than for the 6 children they murdered. The dogs were seen as innocent creatures deserving of life and care, while the children were viewed as problems to be eliminated. A 14-member coroner's jury unanimously ruled the case a murder-suicide after reviewing all the evidence. The inquest was called to determine the cause of death, and the conclusion was clear. This was an intentional act designed to kill everyone in the vehicle. According to an incident report filed after the murders, Sarah had made a telling comment to a coworker that provides insight into their mindset. She said, she wished someone told her it was okay not to have a big family. Then she and Jennifer would not have adopted the children. This statement reveals that the children were viewed as burdens rather than beloved family members, and suggests that the couple felt trapped by their decision to adopt. The California Highway Patrol stated that criminal prosecution was not possible due to the deaths of any responsible parties, bringing a legal end to the case but leaving many questions about how such a tragedy could have been allowed to occur. The Hart family case represents one of the most comprehensive failures of child protection systems in recent American history. Despite numerous reports of abuse spanning nearly a decade across 3 different states, involving multiple agencies and countless opportunities for intervention, these 6 children were never removed from their abusive home. The case raises profound questions about how we investigate child abuse, the role of social media in masking family dysfunction, and the particular vulnerabilities of children in isolated situations. The tragedy forces us to confront uncomfortable truths about our assumptions regarding family structures and who we perceive as potential abusers. The Harts successfully manipulated their identity as a progressive, interracial, same-sex family to deflect criticism and avoid scrutiny, weaponizing legitimate concerns about discrimination to silence those who question their parenting. This case demonstrates how even the most well-intentioned social progress can be exploited by those with malicious intent. The children's voices, when they were finally able to speak, painted a clear picture of systematic abuse, control, and deprivation. Hannah's desperate midnight escape, Devontae's constant begging for food, and the children's consistent reports of abuse to teachers and investigators represented multiple cries for help that went unheeded. Their courage in speaking out, despite the risks, honors their memory and demands that we do better in protecting other vulnerable children. The Hart family murders serve as a stark reminder that evil can hide behind the most progressive and loving facades, and that our responsibility to protect children must transcend our assumptions about what constitutes a safe family environment.